Hi, welcome to the Hope Relentless Marriage Podcast. Chad and Sarah Gale here, and we hope you're having a fantastic day. Today, we're going to recap our initial series that we talked about in our first two podcast episodes. The first one being Why Marriage, the Power of Partnership. We talked about the significance of the husband and wife relationship and how two truly is better than one. And through the highs and lows of life, that we can get so much more accomplished and we can have so much more support together. And then our second podcast, we talked about why marriage, the power of family. And we talked about the significance of that partnership of the husband and wife impacting the children and also even the extended family and how that impacts the relationships that are out in the world. And it leads us up to what we're going to talk about today, which is the power of community.
Yeah, and so this concept of as we review why marriage, there's so much in our life that is asking for our attention. Why should we invest our time and our energy in marriage? And today we're looking at how a healthy marriage, a marriage that is full of laughter and joy and romance, the impact we can have on the community. And as we talk about community, I just want to define it for a moment. Community is wherever we are. So that can be in our homes with our neighbors that are down the street. That can be if we have kids, where our kids go to school, if our kids play sports, if we're a part of a church, even the grocery store that we regularly visit. It's the place of where do you find yourself engaging with other people? That is our community. And so Sarah Gale and I strongly believe that when our marriage is healthy and is thriving, when there is confidence, not perfection,
Yeah.
but enjoying our marriage, then as we go into these places, our work and just the places that we go day to day, the impact, the opportunity to impact our community is significant. And by the nature of how our communities are designed, even if we don't leave our community, we have the ability to impact the world. People come into our community, people go out of our community. And so the ripple effect when we invest in our marriage is unlimited. When our marriage is healthy, our family is healthy, our kids are healthy, and we have the ability to take that into our communities or to invite people in our community back into our home. So when we talk about why marriage, it's because the marriage is kind of the foundation that has the ability to impact every other area of our life. And we recognize as we talk about ways to impact the community, individuals can impact the community. You don't need to be married
Yeah.
to impact the community. But if we are married and our marriage is struggling, then the likelihood is our ability to go out and impact our community is reduced or limited. And so we want to start from a firm foundation, a healthy marriage, so that as we go out across our day to day, that we are doing so from a place of strength, from a place of confidence, from a place of faith.
So good. And this topic fires me up because I believe we were made for it. We were made to make a difference. Speaking from a biblical perspective, Jesus died for each one of us individually. So we matter. He loves us just one on one. But when we are married, it becomes something that is a little bit different in the sense that there are two of us in a relationship. So the purpose and plans for our life are, yes, for us, but also we recognize that we have a marriage, we have a partner, we have a family. So the purpose becomes bigger than just us. And so we're called to do more than just be, just ourselves and our own purpose and to just focus on what we're doing alone. We're called to be cities on a hill. We're called to bring others in. We're called to include. We are called to let our light shine. And we are here for such a time as this. There could have been any other time that we were born, but we were here. We were born to be here now and to make an impact, not only on our own families, on our own selves, but in the community. And God has a hope and a future for us, plans to prosper us and not to harm us. And so He has given us all we need to actually be that difference in the community.
And I think about this when we're married, we are still individuals, right?
Mhm.
We don't want to lose
Right.
sight of our individual self. We're unique. There are things that you like, there are things that I like. Sometimes we go into the community together, and other times you have different communities that I do. Sarah Gale is actively a part of a local Toastmasters, and I'll go to some of those events. But by and large, that is very much her community. And that is great. We don't want to lose sight that we are individuals with an individual purpose and plan that God has given us. But there's also power, kind of going back to the beginning of that partnership, of that family, to go into the community as a collective unit to bring encouragement. I think about our sons as they're going to school and as they're playing sports, and the absence of encouragement in those spaces. There's so much either competition or comparison or criticism that when we can go out as a family with encouragement, that we can have a massive impact on the overall environment.
Yeah.
And that's part of this purpose that we're talking about. To feel uh, to be fulfilled, to be satisfied. I think part of that is to step into that purpose that God has given us. I think about the story where they're asking Jesus to sum up all of the laws, and he kind of simplifies it and says, we are called to love God and to love people. That is what we are created for. And what I love is that can take on so many unique examples in different ways within our own personalities that we can love God and love people. But at the core, that is our purpose, both as individuals, as marriages, and as a family when we're engaging with our community, whether we're inviting them into our home or whether we're leaving our home and going out into our community for the various day-to-day activities.
Yeah. And so, as we're talking about how marriages can impact communities, there's a story that comes to mind. And we were of a church community in LA some years ago. And there we have some dear friends, Alex and Shauna Jones Moreno. Call out to them. And every Christmas, and I think maybe Thanksgiving, they would open up their home to people who didn't necessarily have somewhere to spend the holidays with. And they would not only just open their home, but they would provide a feast.
Yeah.
Shana would be cooking for, I think, multiple days before the actual day where people would come over. And a couple things stand out to me during that example. One was that we very much partook in those green, that mac and cheese,
Brisket.
banana pudding. Ooh, we very much partook in that delicious feast, but also that she provided, and Alex, they provided an atmosphere of intentionality. Because it's one thing as you open up your home to provide an atmosphere where people just come in and they're just there. But it's another thing to be intentional about speaking life over people and about including people and about just offering service to one another. And so that's what happened at those events that really stood out to me because for us it was not something that was normal. We lived in LA and there wasn't a lot of community available, but yet there were lights, there were people, cities on a hill like Shun and Alex that were opening their home to us that we could benefit from. Another thing that stood out to me is that she impacted people, lots of people. There were, what do you think, Chad? Maybe 100? Like, do you think 100 people there?
I don't know. There's so many people. It's hard to. It was such a big crowd, but at the same time, it felt so intimate. So I don't know. It was a lot. It was a lot of people.
Yeah, a lot of people. And a lot of those people to this day are somewhere else, whether it's different states, different countries. They've started different ministries, they have different vocations. And so she and Alex had an impact in those people's lives. And it's amazing to think about and very humbling to know that as we open our homes in our communities and we invite people in, that those people we invited in will go out and they will have a model of what it is to be hospitable. They'll have a model of what it is to include others and that it's actually possible to sometimes invite strangers even into your home and feed them and have them leaving feeling loved and accepted. And so that just still blows my mind because I know how hard it is to cook greens and such for all of those people. And they did it every single year.
Yeah. I mean, I think when we think about this impacting the community and why the marriage has such a significant ability to do so, like the reality is, for some people, inviting people to your home is natural and it's almost easy. And for other personalities, like it's inconvenient.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's
Yeah.
like, man, I got to clean up before they come over. I got to clean up after they leave. The grocery bill's larger. I'm cooking for potentially exponentially more people. There's a lot of reasons or a lot of excuses we can make to not want to do that. But if we kind of back up and think about the impact, like it's worth it.
Oh, yeah.
I think another couple is a dear friends of ours, Alex and Jessica. Like their front door
Mhm.
is it's an open door.
Yes.
You'll walk into their house and they'll be friends, they'll be family, they'll be friends they've had for decades, and they'll literally be somebody they met that afternoon.
I think we have the code, right? To
Yeah,
their
we did.
house.
We do have the code to their house. But it's like so many times we show up and there's essentially a stranger there. And I think that's such a beautiful picture. We never know what somebody else is going through when we extend an invitation and how meaningful that can be. And so I want to kind of pose a question here for us to think about. Think about for a moment moments in your life when you've been included in community or moments that you've been excluded from community and how that has felt. I think about that pause for a moment, and it might be a question for us to wrestle with beyond just this moment and in this podcast, but they're significant.
Mm.
Like I know at different times raising two young men, there are times where like one of them is at a party or is hanging out with friends and the other one is at home. And it just feels like, oh man, that the value of community and friendship and celebrating with people
Yeah.
versus having other moments or other seasons or other events where you're not, like it's a big pendulum swing.
Mhm.
And so I think as followers of Christ, when we begin to view our marriage as a ministry, when we begin to view our marriage through a place of purpose and how our family, how our marriage can impact the community by going out into the community and inviting the community into our home. I think that's where those that satisfaction, that purpose, that longing, that knowing that you know what, this day to day life is meaningful and it matters, and we're having an impact directly in our local communities.
Yeah. And again, the health of our marriage is crucial. And not the perfection. We've already talked about it's not about perfection. That's unattainable. And that actually leads to a lot of frustration and disappointment to have that perspective. But it is about a continued process, a continued desire of growth in our relationship. And so as our marriages are healthier, it allows us to actually want to be a city on a hill, to want to open our homes to people and to invite people in and to just be present with them because we have nothing to hide. In our authentic selves, in our relationship, we can invite people in, have them be a part of our family, a part of our day-to-day rhythms, and we will bless them tremendously. And so I just want to encourage those who are listening, when you look at the health of your marriage, are you growing or are you stagnant? Because a lot of times there's no in between. We're either growing or we're either dying. And so if you are not in a place that you want to be, then I want to encourage you to reach out and to look other places, other podcasts, other books, other resources to help your marriage to be the priority that it needs to be. And ultimately, when our marriages are that priority, they are much more fulfilling. And we do have the ability in that regards to impact the community and the world. And I think many of us, when we look at the world today, there's a lot of things that we wish were different. There's a lot of conversations that we wish were different. And sometimes I think we feel like, who are we? How can we really make an impact? But the reality is, we can truly make an impact through our marriages. We have the ability through our marriages, through our families, and then ultimately our communities to change the world.
Yeah.
We can change the world one marriage at a time, starting with yours.
Yeah, and as we wrap up this episode, a couple thoughts that I think about is, how we impact and engage with the community can look different. There's different ways to do it. It can be inviting people into our home. It can be volunteering in our kids' schools. It can be volunteering as a coach in a local sports. And all of these things require time, but it's being present within the community. And then the other thing, in Proverbs, it talks about as iron sharpens iron, so does one man sharpen another.
Mhm.
And so I want to encourage us not to feel like we have to arrive somewhere before we begin to engage with our community.
It's good.
Not, it is actually by engaging with our community that we will become better versions of ourselves.
It's good.
I was reading this book, The Habits of the Household,
Mm.
and the author talks about the difference between hosting and entertaining. Entertaining is we invite people into our home to present ourselves in a particular positive light and give them a good time. That's a lot of energy. Hosting is we invite people into our house to experience the house the way that it naturally is. And I think sometimes as in our culture, it's easy to default to entertaining, the pressure to present ourselves in a certain way, the pressure to make sure everybody has a great time. That takes more energy. That takes more time. That takes more financial resources as opposed to the front door. Hey, come in. Sometimes it's going to be messy. Sometimes dinner's going to be chaotic, or maybe it's a hodgepodge of different things because, we got more people in the house suddenly than we anticipated. So the meal plan was for 6 people and suddenly there's 9. And so you just figure things out, but it's just inviting into the authentic day to day life. I know for us, between our careers, the kids, what they're pursuing, it's not always clean. It's not always in order. Sometimes there's some chaos to it, but it's worth it to engage with people in that capacity.
Yes. Well, well said, my love. I love hearing you speak. So much wisdom. And I certainly hope that you listening have enjoyed this series of why marriage and that from it you can gather the significance and the opportunity we have with our marriage and through our marriage to impact our families and our families to impact our communities and the communities ultimately impact the world. We are changing the world. What an honor it is to be a part of that and God's greater plan. And so we pray that your family would flourish and we pray that you would see the place that you have in being a part of the solution in our world problems. And until next time, remember, there is always, always hope.